trust in leadership. Why does it matter? Trust obviously isn't a new topic of discussion, but it's one that is obviously increasingly important. And we definitely continue to see examples of the importance of trust in leadership. So before we get going here and before we introduce the panel, in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, the Nakota Nations, the Métis Nation, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. Today's presenters are Jory Lamb with VistaView Solutions, Rob Hilditch with Hardings, and Sheldon Kennedy with Respect Group. Jory Lamb is an MBA graduate of the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business and a graduate of the University of Saskatchewan with a degree in commerce. Throughout his career, Jory has successfully started and sold several technology-based businesses. Under Jory's leadership, VistaView Solutions' success has been recognized by Inc. magazine, Profit magazine, and Venture magazine, winning each award multiple times. VistaView has also been recognized for its ethical practice by winning the Better Business Bureau Torch Awards for ethics twice. Outside of work, Jory is a passionate fan of the entrepreneurial spirit. In 2010, he founded the Calgary EO Accelerator Program, which helps budding entrepreneurs break through $1 million in sales, US dollars in sales. From 2014 to 2016, Jory sat as a director of the Wharton Entrepreneurs Club and sat on the MBA advisory board for the Wharton program in San Francisco. Thank you for joining us, Jory. Rob Hilditch. Rob is the president of Harding Services. He has spent the last 25 years developing his skills as a leader and manager in various industries. Rob's passion for leadership, corporate culture, and marketing, along with his experience in construction, sales, and brand development, has helped Hardings progress into the leading home improvement company in Calgary and beyond. Before Hardings, Rob spent 16 years with the Joey's Franchise Group, with disciplines in operations, real estate development, construction and project management, legal and franchise development. Rob is really passionate about giving back to the community, and he also serves here on our board of directors for BBB, serving Southern Alberta and East Kootenay. As well, Rob is a founder of Business for Calgary Kids, which aims to raise money for non-for-profit organizations that support local kids in need through an annual charity golf tournament. And Sheldon Kennedy with us. Sheldon has co-founded the Respect Group with Wayne McNeil to pursue their common passion, the prevention of bullying, abuse, harassment, and discrimination, or as they refer to as BAD. Incorporated in April 2004, Respect Group is made up of a team of 20 talented individuals whose passion is to create a global culture of respect. Respect Group provides empowering online abuse, bullying, and harassment prevention education to sport organizations, schools, and the workplace. Sheldon himself won a Memorial Cup, World Junior Gold Medal, and skated for 3 teams in his 8-year NHL career. He is best known for his courageous decision to charge his major junior hockey league coach with sexual assault for the abuse that he suffered over a 5-year period while a teenager under his care. Through this disclosure and the important work that Sheldon continues to do, he has become an inspiration to millions of abuse survivors around the world. Sheldon has been instrumental in bringing governments, public and private sector partners together to work collaboratively to influence policy change and improve the way child abuse is handled. He has influenced changes in Canadian law and has taken his message to the International Olympic Committee and the US Senate. Sheldon was also co-founder of the Calgary Child Advocacy Centre, the first of its kind in Canada, offering full wraparound services for victims of child abuse. So thank you, Jory. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Sheldon. I am so excited to have each of you here today for this discussion. And I'd like to just invite Jory to maybe give a brief introductory statement before we get going into the discussions. I'll invite each of you, but we'll start with Jory.
Great. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
The tagline for 2020. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
First of all, I guess a I'd like to just start off by thanking the BBB for inviting me to co-present with both Rob and Sheldon. Pleasure to be here today. And I want to thank each of you that's out there listening right now and watching right now, because again, you have choices on what you can do with your day, and you've chosen to be with us. So I look forward to a good discussion. Leadership is a topic that's been widely written about, so I'm not sure I'm going to shed a lot of light onto the topic of leadership per se, but I will share from my own experiences some key lessons that I've taken away from leadership. Leadership happens in all forms, in all shapes, and all sizes, but I think great leaders share three things, at least in my experience. They all start with a purpose. They all have a clear idea of what's getting them out of bed in the morning and why they are doing what they're doing. They all share core values, goalposts by which they will operate in, and they all share a vision of where they're trying to get to. Now, their visions are going to vary widely, but they all have those three common elements of a purpose, core values, and a vision. And I think through my experience in business and in community, when leadership goes sideways, it's often a loss of focus on those three things. And I'll finish by saying, while the leader is critical to the journey, to the end goal, to getting that mission accomplished, I never want to minimize the importance of the first follower, because without them, there is no leader. So I look forward to the discussion and hearing, from each of you, your thoughts and comments as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Jory. That's great insight to start us. So thank you for that. Rob, I'll turn it over to you, please. And if you'd like to give a little introductory statement.
Sure. First, I want to say thank you to the Better Business Bureau for hosting this. And second, I am in terrific company with both Jory and Shelley. I look up to both of these guys, especially Sheldon over the last several years, and the courage it takes for him to do what he's done. And I'm proud of him, and I'm proud of the BBB for, sourcing him to be involved in this. I don't have as an eloquent a speech as Jory does to start this off. This is something that means a lot to me as far as trust and leadership, and always working on getting better at it. And I want to be able to use today as a learning tool for myself, because, even though I'm speaking on it today, I'm not always the best at it. So again, just super excited to hear what Jory and Shelley both have to say about it.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Rob. And Sheldon, over to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mary, and it's an honor to be here. And I think for me, I've learned a lot over the years from people that have come before me. Leadership is a taught skill, and I was taught by some good people. And I think leadership also is about being able to learn from your mistakes and not being scared to try things and showing people the way. To me, that's what I learned, and I've made many mistakes. But I think being able to it's interesting because I'm on this panel, this review panel right now, looking at a national organization that works, and this is what we're actually looking at is trust and leadership, and it's really and I think what we found is about really trying to bridge the gap between all of our policies and all of our procedures, and we got that box checked and this box checked, but it's kind of like we got the leaders here throwing the ball and the receiver's nowhere near it. And I think, basically that's what we're trying to do, is fill that gap. How do we actually, make this stuff become real in your organization? And to me, it's about creating relationships and, meeting people face to face and I think taking that personal element to it.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Sheldon. And you're right. As BBB, we've been serving the community for more than 100 years, and we're based really on foundations, and we measure the standards of a business. And yet at the end of the day, it's really the people in the business that are going to choose to operate ethically and be pillars of trust. And that's really what we celebrate when we celebrate businesses, are the people in the business. So let's just kind of jump right into the discussion. All of you sort of started off talking about what trust means to you. Let's talk a little bit about maybe what's your biggest challenge. Sheldon, you started talking about we've all made mistakes, and we certainly have. So why don't we start there? Why don't we talk about maybe what some of the biggest challenges are in building trust in your own industries? So Rob, maybe we'll start with you. I know for you, you come from a little bit of a different lens, of course, with the franchise world and always having to be dealing with different franchise partners. What are some of the difficulties that you've had in building trust in the industry?
I would say in the industry in total, building trust is really just understanding your clients and what their needs are and failing at those. So it's about, I guess, openness for us and the lack of it sometimes that we have between our customers and ourselves, specifically to us in the industry. I think a large part of it, when you look at the mistrust that our industry gets, it comes from the lack of leadership and people running companies ethically. So that's always been our biggest challenge, is, making sure that we're effectively being progressive about that and understanding where our clients come from and trying to, bridge that gap between the mistrust of what contractors can or cannot do in stealing people's money or whatever it may be. We've all watched Mike Holmes. So that's always, I guess, the biggest gap for us. And that's where, our group is really good at building the trust and building the relationship. Shelley just talked about it as far as relationships, in a what I'll call, I guess, B2C relationship. It's easy for us in a B2B or a C2C to build a relationship. You can receive trust by giving trust. But when a customer is calling into a contractor, you can't just give them trust. You've got to prove it. So that to me is the biggest gap. And there's tons of different challenges in that. But it's certainly bridging that gap.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Rob. Is it difficult being able to extend trust to new franchise partners, and how do you go about that? It's definitely something that you have to have as part of your own mission statements.
It's funny because it's so Jory mentioned it, and it's a Derek Strivers relationship of you can't be a good leader unless you have that first follower. And if anybody hasn't seen that video, it's hilarious. It's awesome to watch. It was a really good illustration of it. But for us, like in the franchising world, if we've already got a few franchises in here, you've already got that first follower. So bringing the first one in, you literally have to give them the trust. It's earned through time and the relationship you build with them. And it's to build that relationship, or to be able to, to be able to show your trust to them, you've got to give them enough rope to make the mistakes. You also have to make sure that they need to feel safe within your environment, and that they're allowed to feel or be vulnerable, so that, they can say to you, hey, I made this mistake, and then come back to you. And by being able to do that, that's reciprocating the trust. So for us, it's about, I kind of came up with this analogy. It's about giving people rope and the right amount of rope. And I got to kind of, the right people use the right amount of rope. And if they're using the right amount of rope, you have no problem giving them more. People learning in the franchise system will tug at that rope. And that's what helps, I think, build that relationship of that give and take, and the giving and receiving of trust. The wrong people carry scissors. And as leaders and as franchisors, we learn to try and dull those scissors and get those franchisees or licensees on side. But then, you've got some people who just carry knives, and hopefully they don't get into your system, but some of them carry knives, and, you at that point in time, you just kind of fire those people. So no knives is kind of my analogy towards it, as far as, when you're looking for a franchisee. That's the biggest part right there, is trying to figure out, which person that is when you're bringing them on as a franchisee.
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. Thanks for that, Rob. Jory, I want to talk a little bit about trust in your industry, but before we go there, I know when we were discussing earlier, I know you started your company when you were 23 years old, fresh out of school in Saskatchewan, and started working within agriculture. And I imagine as a 23-year-old who, fresh out of school, who has to go and build trust with farmers. How did you go about doing that in your early years?
Well, we're rewinding the clock now, aren't we?
Yeah.
I've often said, if you can sell to farmers, you can sell to anyone, right? Like and so I think I learned, not dissimilar to Rob's story, through trial and error, I think, about the importance of just keeping your word. Like, sales is pretty simple. If you keep your word, life gets easy. If you don't, life gets hard. So, when I think about the common thread that binds the several companies that I've been involved with over the years, it's been able to solve business problems using technology. And so whether it was in the agricultural space, or whether it was in oil field services, or most recently, whether it's in a whole litany of industries, across North America, what we sell is a complex product that's very invasive. And the cost of the actual product is nothing compared to the cost of change that the customer will encounter. All for good purposes, all to a great end. So when I think about trust, and there's many factors that go into creating trust and maintaining trust, I think, a few that come to mind are, like I said, keep your word.
Mm-hmm.
You show up on day one, you say you're going to do something, you do it. You've just added, another drop into the trust bucket with your customer. And when I also think about trust, I think for us, it's credibility. So the early days, we didn't have that. And if you're just starting out in business, you can't say, hey, look at all the plaques on the wall, and hey, look at all the customers I've already sold and all the references I can point to. So if it's early days, and that's where you were taking me, Mary, the single piece of advice that I could have for anyone is keep your word. Just do what you say you're going to do, and life gets simple.
And that's really important, Jory, because, during Small Business Week, when we have discussions with a lot of entrepreneurs and startups, oftentimes they don't have that credibility yet. They don't have that proof in business. They haven't built those relationships. And so we all just are really starting somewhere. But I want to talk a little bit about that cost of change, though. I know VistaView Solutions has, they've dealt with some of the largest global players in multiple industries across a number of countries. And when you're rolling out ERPs, there really is a connection with trust, from the end user to implementation. What are some strategies that you've put in place when you're rolling out systems and procedures?
Yeah, great question. And not to hog the mic, because I do want to hear from everyone on the panel. But I think for us, I'll try to be concise. When we're rolling out a global implementation across some large enterprise, what's critical is, and now I'm going to steal shamelessly. So one of my profs at Wharton, a gentleman by the name of David Pottruck. David's claim to fame is he was the former CEO of Charles Schwab. And then he was also at one time the chairman of Intel. And David wrote a book called Stacking the Deck, because when you're doing complex global rollouts like we've done, it's all about organizational change management. And the key to success there is, if you're trying to drive change in an organization, whether it's yours or someone else's, you got to stack the deck in your favor. Thanks, David. And how you do that is you pick the group that's most accepting, adaptable to change, and you work with them. And that's the group that becomes your first hill that you take. And as you do that, you build momentum. And as you build momentum through the success of that group, you get more and more success. And the inertia of it stops or temporarily impedes change resistors from having the voice that would otherwise keep the company or keep the organization from achieving its goals.
Excellent. Thank you for that. We talked a little bit about, needing that first follower. And, you know, Rob referenced it to the franchise world. Sheldon, let's talk a little bit about that, because when you're building, and you know, even if we look at Respect Group or the Child Advocacy Center, when you're building your own team, trust is critical when you're building that team, especially in the work that you've done dealing with, you know, really vulnerable sectors. It's one thing to be able to hire people based on competencies and know that you're building your team with the right set of skill sets. It's something entirely different when we talk about building a team of trustworthy individuals. And how have you gone about that, Sheldon?
Well, just back to Jory's early days, I am a farmer, so you sold me on your trust and leadership, so you're pretty good. Well, you know, I think, Mary, like, it's been interesting because, you know, if you look at just Sheldon on a personal level, you know, it was widespread, you know, in my NHL career, Sheldon was known as a, you know, an alcoholic, this wild, troubled kid. So now we're going to come out into a world, right, where we have a business and we're going to educate your people on abuse, bullying, harassment, and discrimination over 22 years ago, when they weren't the flavor of the month, right? They weren't very popular back then. You didn't even talk about this stuff, right? So first off, I think, you know, I needed to personally get, you know, to get my life in order. And I had to show people, and I had to walk the walk to build trust. And that took time, right? That took time. I mean, you know, it just takes time. And I think it's a never ending commitment. It's never ending to keep working on that trust and building trust and strengthening those relationships. And, you know, and I got to the point where, you know, in 1998, when I rollerbladed across the country, I did what I thought was the most important thing in front of me. You know, I picked up the newspaper and I read that I was Newsmaker of the Year in Canada in '97. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I haven't even done anything. And I was looking down the list. Well, there's Terry Fox and Rick Hansen. So I thought to myself, well, I'm going to rollerblade across the country. I went across the country. I had an impact. We had lots of conversations, but I learned a lot from that. And it was that I had a lot more healing to do. And I think that, you know, I think that for me to be the best I can be for our clients, for the people that I work with, for my family, is I have to take care of myself. Yeah. Like personal well-being and wellness to me is critical. And when I can do that, and when I can commit to that, I'm a better leader, and I'm better for our clients. I'm better for those who we serve, and I'm better when I come home. And I think, you know, it took a long time, and we've been at these issues for 22 years in a very public manner. And, you know, we started off with, you know, online learning 22 years ago when it wasn't real popular around issues that definitely weren't popular. And we managed to get that one follower, and we delivered. And I think where we really pride ourselves on is delivery, right? Over deliver, and making sure that experience is the best it can be. But I think, you know, when you create those great relationships, you know, if something goes wrong, you've got a good relationship to be able to fix that along with your client. And, you know, because there's that trust, and, you know, we've experienced that. And I think we've gone from being laughed out of rooms, we don't need this, to training over 1.5 million people a year. So it's, you know, and some of the best brands in, you know, in our country. But it's about, to me, it's been a journey. And I think the best realization I had, Mary, was the fact that, you know, the best I can be for others is making sure that I show up the best I can be.
Thanks for that, Sheldon. And you're right on with that. And I think the fact of the matter is there's a lot of leaders that struggle with that. They struggle with being able to really be honest about the fact that maybe they need to take a step back. Maybe they need to readjust things. I know for myself in leadership, even as a woman in leadership, oftentimes there's that feeling that you just need to push through, you need to prove yourself. And the fact is, the best thing that we can do is, put our own mask on first, not our COVID mask, but our mask, our own lifeline. And as leaders, we oftentimes struggle with that. And so how important is that, Sheldon, to, the practice of that in actually building trust in leadership? Is there a connection with that?
Well, I mean, I've just taken a step back. I mean, I had, we had the Prime Minister naming a building after Sheldon, and Sheldon took his name off it. So it was not an easy decision, but it was a critical decision, and a critical decision for many different reasons. And I feel, but if I look at where, I guess, kind of, my position, being such a forward, kind of the go-to person with these types of issues. We have a little son. My wife and I have a son, a 2.5-year-old son, and I think, what became real in my world was the ability to hindsight's 2020, right? I'm not repeating, being on the road and being as crazy as I was with my daughter, who's 24 now. I want to be present, and I had so much fear of making that decision because it was my identity. It was who I was for 22 years. And I mean, we did a lot of great work there, but you know what? I think the key to all of that was I have some really good people in my life, and being able to have those honest conversations and talk about those fears, and, talk about, the potential consequences that I felt. And I think that, just taking a step back from having your foot on the gas so much is not easy, because when you do it, your body is still operating at a level with your foot to the floor, the gas pedal at the floor. And meanwhile, I felt myself being very anxious and antsy for a long time. And I had to do a lot of personal work on that to get to a point where, to realize that, I don't have to answer that phone at 5 a.m, right? Yeah. And I think that was a big learning experience. And, but yet I think at the end of the day, through my conversations, is I felt confident about how we set up the organizations in this province, what we did, the core funding we put in place through Alberta Health, the police, the criminal justice systems, child and family services, and the change that we made, and legislation changes that we made, so that the systems will never go back to working the way they used to work. And I felt confident in that. And I actually just got off the phone with one of the guys that runs the Red Deer Child Advocacy Center, and you know what? And they're just ripping on it. They're giving her. And you know what? And I think sometimes it's good to get out of the way, right? Yeah. And help guide behind the scenes. And I feel, it just puts a smile on my face, and and gives me that sense of, and I think as hard as this has been, this COVID, it's made me kind of step back and really just reassess and reset things in a way that have been healthy in my world.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for that, Sheldon. It really, as leaders, when we take care of ourselves and we show that vulnerability, it really does give others around us the permission to do the same. And it's so important to lead by example in that. You brought up COVID, and so Rob, I'm just going to pivot to you for a minute, and let's talk about COVID. I know, you right away, obviously you're very involved in the community. We see it a lot for those that follow you on social media. You're very passionate about mental wellness and whole self, but COVID was hard, and it was hard on everybody in a lot of different ways. But when we talk about trust in leadership, when we talk about who we bring to the table every day, you hit the ground running in a different way when COVID happened. What were your strategies on getting through that? You're muted, Rob. Yeah.
Mute. Is that good?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, my iPad's freezing on me. Yeah, just a mental note. I might be flipping to my laptop, so you might see me jump in again in a sec. I read at the very beginning, for me, quite honestly, it came out of just intuitiveness. The first week or so of COVID, we shut our office down. I obviously, as you mentioned, I suffer from depression, have for a long time. And I just sank into it right away. So for me, it was about survival for me. Not necessarily thinking about what Harding's was going to look like through this. It just happened to be, a mutual benefactor of it. But for me, it was literally about trying to just stay busy, keep myself focused on doing something. So we started with a food drive here in Calgary, and we helped the food bank. The first one, I had just gone out to friends and family and kind of things just close to us. And we filled the back of my F-150. Wasn't that big of a deal. My old group at Joey's Seafood Group, they own North Sea Foods now, and they help participate in each of them with giving us a bunch of turduckens. And it put a smile on my face to be able to go to the Veterans Food Bank and be able to go to the regular food bank and just make a difference. Also, just keep myself busy every day driving around the city picking up food. We waited a couple of weeks, and then we did another one. And that one, we decided to use our database, and we went out to our Harding's database of about, 15,000 people, and said, hey, this is what we're doing. And it took me 2 weeks to collect all the food. It was absolutely crazy. I could not believe the response that we had. And what it was able to do was build that trust with our clients. Now, it wasn't about just going out and keeping me busy. Now it became about this relationship thing that we were building with our clients and the trust that we were doing with them. And it was really kind of just heartwarming to see how many of those clients ended up calling us throughout the summer and getting work done again. And maybe it was because, we did something that was impactful in the neighborhood. Maybe it was just because they needed work done. I don't know, but it was nice to see. And so I think for me, at least, it was about survival and keeping things just moving and keeping my thought processes moving and doing something other than just sitting at home and wondering what's going to happen to our business. I just chose to be more proactive. And again, the business part of it became a mutual benefactor. For me, it was about keeping myself sane.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Rob. I know that you've always been very upfront and honest, and so I knew it was a safe space for me to be able to lead in.
Certainly. The more we talk about it, Mary, the more people will talk.
100%. Couldn't agree more. I do want to talk about just trust and leadership in the impact communities. All of you as business leaders are very involved in community initiatives and driving change in the community. Jory, how important is that to see our leaders as really members of the community impacting change?
Yeah, great question. There's a few thoughts I have on that. My first thought is one way to truly change the world is to build a great business. And again, I know corporate Canada, corporate America can at times get a bad rap, but if we want to do things in a material, meaningful way, corporations have a lot of resources at their disposal if they choose to use them as a good citizen of their communities. So we're really big on giving back. You don't have to travel far, and you don't have to travel long to appreciate even my worst days are better than some. So my personal charity that I'm a big fan of is anything to do with children and homelessness. Both our offices in the US are in Houston, our offices here in Calgary, and in two cities as affluent as we are, the thought that some child might wake up in the morning not knowing, where they're going to sleep or where they're going to get a meal, that's, it's unfathomable, right? Given just the sheer economic wealth of these two cities. And then I guess if I bring it to more about what we're trying to do is we're really working on, so a key core value of ours is gratitude. So it's really important for us as an organization to say thank you loudly and often. And what I don't want to do is impose my personal views on the charities that I want to participate in on our whole organization. So we do matching with the organization. We've done volunteer days with the organization. And I think and coming back to your question, I feel like we have an obligation to give back, right? I mean, Calgary's been great to me, my family, our business, the cities that our clients operate in, the cities that other staff across North America that work with us operate in, have all treated us very well. So we have an obligation to give back.
Yeah, that's excellent, Jory. And it's very impressive the work that you do in the community and your passion. I know that ripples through your organization. I know this past year you won the BBB Ethics Award, and that was definitely something that we saw as part of that too. So thank you for sharing that. And I really like that gratitude piece. That's really important for sure. Sheldon, I mean, the work that you have done in giving back to community in so many different ways is so critical. And sometimes I think as small businesses, they might struggle with, well, how can I get involved if I'm not well known like Sheldon, if I'm not a large company like Jory, how can I get involved in my small corner in order to really impact change in my community? Sheldon, you're on mute. No problem. There you go.
Yeah. I think just the way I personally look at giving back and kind of my philosophy around giving back is that we can give in many different ways. Some people, it's important to give money. Some people can give time. But what I've learned over the years is that, when I can help and when I can give, that whatever it is, that small little gesture, whether it be opening a door, whether it be shoveling my neighbor's sidewalk, it makes me feel better. And I don't have to, think about that any more than that. I mean, when we can give and help in our community and give back, I think it makes us better as not only as individuals but as businesses. And I think that's been a big part of my life, obviously, and I've learned a lot through that. And and I think what I've tried to do, I think, over the last few years, just because of things I've learned, is that try to really create a focus in the way we give. Because if we look at social issues in our community, there's a lot of connections, right? If you look at child abuse, for an example, I mean, 80% of people that are in detox centers and treatment centers in our communities have disclosed early childhood abuse. I mean, the leading contributor, the leading impact of child abuse is mental health. I mean, kids that have been abused are, some of our leading, leading individuals on the streets and in our homeless shelters. So to me, we've really tried to create a focus in how we give, and we've tried to include other businesses so that we can get a focus, so that we can have a better impact collectively in this area. And I think that's something that, I'm actually sitting on a group, on a panel with a few CEOs of some larger companies, but that's part of our discussion, is actually really trying to create a focus on the way that we go about, from A to Z, because a lot of times when we give, it's either kids issues or adults issues. Meanwhile, what we do know is that the leading contributor to social issues as adults stem from childhood. So how do we create that, focus? And if this is where your area is, and, ending homelessness, this is great. But, to ultimately end homelessness, we need to be able to put something here and start at the start of it. And I think it's really about knowledge and learning and teaching. And it hasn't been until the last little while that we've had the science and the data and the understanding and the clarity to connect those dots. And so, learned a lot over the years, and it's it's shifted. But I think at the end of the day, I got to remember one thing, and that is, however we give, whatever it is, however big it is, and however small it is, it feels good when you can do that, and when you can lend a hand, however you can. So it doesn't matter if you give $1 million or if you give $1 or you shovel your neighbor's sidewalk. I think it's the action that matters.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think we saw that a lot, especially during this pandemic, this last 7 months, is just all the different ways that we can be giving and making a difference in our community. And there's a growing number of research about how, employees want to work for companies that are making a difference. They want to make sure, and we talk about that a lot, when you're looking for work, make sure that you're looking for companies that are aligned in your own values, and it's not just a paycheck. You're going to get a lot more fulfillment at the end of the day when you're working for companies that you're aligned with. So let's lead a little bit back into the leadership part of it. And, given this pandemic, obviously it's been difficult on a lot of businesses. How different is it? And Jory, maybe we'll start with you. How different is it leading through difficult times, and really being able to build trust during difficult times?
Yeah, I smile because I think we're getting good at this. So if I rewind the clock back to, we've been through the .com boom and bust.
Yeah.
There was a time we sold software into the cattle industry. You referenced my ag days. We went through BSC, or what's otherwise known as mad cow disease. We went through global recession. We went through umpteen highs and lows on the price of oil. So it's not something we like to brag about, but we're actually getting pretty good at dealing with crisis with our business. And I think, when we dust off the playbook, so every time a down market hits us and hits the economy, not just us, a couple key rules, like get super close to your key clients, not because it's about money, it's about they're in crisis too. And you need to be there together. Like, you built the business together. They were there with you in the good times. You need to be there for them in the bad times. So in multiple examples, we're an organization that makes money by selling software and delivering services. And in multiple examples, we took a haircut wherever we needed to, however we needed to. We did whatever we needed to make sure that they got through this, because if they don't get to the other end, we don't get to the other end. So that was critical for us. And then as far as building trust, I think this is the time to build trust. This right now is the moment. Anyone can lead in good times, but not everyone can lead in bad times. And the best leaders emerge in the toughest periods. And I think for us, we've taken advantage of being able to display the true caring of our organization in this moment. And I think it's allowed us as an organization to not only weather the storm, but to actually come out stronger on the other side. So I'll stop there, and again, love to hear what some of the other guys are thinking.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jory. Sheldon, how about over to you on really that same question there?
Well, I liked what Jory had to say. I think this is, and we feel the same way with Respect Group. It is the time to continually building those trust and finding ways to get through it together, and trying to be creative, right? Try to be creative with our clients and help how we can. I mean, we offer a service. I mean, and if you look at, we're in the sport world, we're in the corporate world, and we're in the education world. And we deliver a service around psychological safety, whether it be in the workplace or, in sport. Well, they shut all sport down across this country, right? So they're sitting there reeling, trying to figure out how they're going to keep their doors open, whether it be Soccer Ontario, who's got 700,000 members, or Hockey Canada, or, whoever, right? And, so I think it's really, like, going back to our initial conversation, this is the time that you spend building those trust relationships and those strong relationships, because these are the times where, where they really spread their wings. And, I think for us, it was really important to, going into COVID, it was very important for us to figure out how we were going to keep every one of our employees employed. And that was really important to us. And so far we've managed to do that. And, I think just hunkering her down and finding ways and, and I think being able to, get all the cards on the table and, figure out that if we need to rejig this, and I think being able to try to morph with it and morph with all of the changes that have come along. And, but I think it comes down to being open and honest about where we're at, right? And being able to reach out to our clients and say, how about this? And I think, make it work for them, right? Make and show them that you're willing to go above and beyond to help them in these times. And because like what Jory said, right? If they're not successful, we're not successful. And so yeah, it's been interesting, put it that way. But I think we might have so far we've I think made a go out of it, and hopefully it'll continue.
That's awesome. And I can't agree more. The time is now. There is so much opportunity. Just when you look at how hungry people are for leadership and for trust and ethics and for doing the right thing, the time is definitely now. And aside from the fact that there's a growing amount of research on just trust in the bottom line, Rob, I know in speaking with a lot of small businesses this week, just about how the pandemic has impacted them. Yours is a business and an industry that have continued to see quite a bit of success. I know you had mentioned that you hit the market right away with food donations and getting involved in the community. Was it difficult for you to be able to lead through that? Sorry, Rob, you're on. Yeah.
Yeah, there. I was scared as we went into it because we're a painting company. We're not allowed in people's houses. Like, how do you go through that? Yes, we were deemed essential. I'll still never understand that, but thank God we were. So I was scared going into it, and we had a roller coaster to go through. The very beginning of the roller coaster was, okay, how do we stay relevant, right? How do I keep my mental health, and how do we stay relevant? Which came with the food drive. The second one for us, and again, all coming back down to the building trust, was staying relevant by building trust. People will follow anybody in the lack of good leadership. And the unfortunate part is that when it comes to the leadership we were seeing provincially or federally was failing. And so I looked at it as kind of, okay, well, great. How do I stay connected with our clients, and how do we maintain that trust so that when this comes back, I'm the first call? So that was kind of the focus that I had taken. And you're right, we've been incredibly, I get verklempt because we've been incredibly blessed. We have been able to make it through this. Like, as a business person, you're always like 6 months capital on hand, 6 months capital on hand. And we went through it and never touched it. I can't explain that, Mary. And I don't know what the reason is. A lot of people in our industry have fared well, but we almost doubled the amount of leads we had coming in from May until this last month. And we had increased our market share significantly throughout the city of Calgary. I can't explain that. I mean, I know we did all these different things, but I honestly believe it comes down to not only what we did at the very beginning, but we also had an initiative where we went out and supported other businesses. I come from the restaurant industry. I've been doing it most of my life. And it was killing me to see my friends and their businesses go under or get close to going under. We've got Chad McCormick from TMAC Group, is a very good friend of mine. He's on our advisory council here, and he's got 11 restaurants between what he owns is on it with himself or with TMAC Group and with the Browns Restaurant Group. My old restaurant group, Joey's Seafood, was Streets and their new Joey's Fish Shack. Lance Hurtabeast and all those different guys that are good friends of mine, that businesses were closed, you know, much like Shelley was talking about with hockey. When you're shut down completely, what do you do? So for me, it was about getting in and trying to help support them and help build trust in their industry. I didn't focus on what we were doing in ours at that point in time. I focused on what they could do to help build trust in their industry. So we started a series of videos with all these different guys talking about how they're doing COVID protocols, how they're getting better at what they do, and how they're pivoting. And the guys that did in those industries, it's phenomenal to see because they've stayed open. So I don't know if that answered your question. For us, it was more about just, you know, building the trust, not just in our industry, but helping others build it in theirs so that we're all supporting each other. You know, they've said throughout all of this, we're all in this together. And I don't believe that. I honestly don't believe that we're all in this together, because every single person's situation is different at the root level. But where we could all be together is how we're supporting each other and supporting our communities and getting better at what we do. And so that's kind of how we focused on it.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks for that, Rob. And you're right. I think Jory referenced that earlier, just the fact that, you know, we are all coming at this from a different lens. And while someone might be struggling for a meal, the other one is, you know, having complete abundance. And so when we think of we're all in this together, we do think of it in different lenses, and which makes trust so important in our leaders. We're about 10 to 2. I just want to invite anybody, if you have any questions. I could speak with this panel all day, but they don't have all day. But if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat box. We will make sure that we take time for that. And while those questions are coming in, I want to ask each of you, and Sheldon, we'll start with you. Small Business Week this week. We've got a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, startups, all, as I said, coming at it from a different lens, different resources. What's the best advice that you would be able to offer to an entrepreneur or startup?
Entrepreneur startup. Geez. Geez, I don't know. You know, I think for us, and I mean, I think it's just, you know, get close to your business, and you know, take this time to really, you know, really take a hard, honest look at the whole business model, and you know, I think for me, since I have taken a little bit of a step back, it's allowed me to really go through just our farming entity and, you know, my actual business life, you know, and respect group with Wayne. And, you know, it was into this giving and, you know, advocacy role, volunteer role, and it was consuming me. And I think that, geez, I have, you know, I've been gifted and, you know, the time to be able to really look at where the businesses are at, and it's just, you know, my whole perception has changed, and the way I'm thinking about everything has changed, because you know, I was thinking this, but when you actually look at it and you're able to chat it out with others, you know, it's in a different place than I thought it was, and also I didn't realize how much I was neglecting it. So you know, it's been good, and I think that it taught me a lesson, that is, we can never get too far away from the nuts and bolts of what makes us tick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I like that, Sheldon. You're right. We can't get too far away from it. And when we are doing those assessments, when we're starting to, you know, stop and pause and take a look at our own businesses or where we need to be spending our time, it's so important to have a trusted network around you that you can really allow yourself to be vulnerable and get that honest feedback, isn't it?
Well, I think that's, for me, that's really important, because I'm a person that, you know, loves to just chat it out, right? Like, let's just, you know, I want somebody. I don't want just somebody to say, yes, Sheldon. Oh, yes, Sheldon. Oh, that's perfect, Sheldon. I want somebody to challenge me and to say, no, I don't. Why don't we look at it this way? And, and I think I've been fortunate that I've had really, really good people in my life and with me through my journey. And to me, that's been the best gift, and that'll be what I'm always grateful for, is that, those people, because, they helped shape who I am. And, they gave me the truth, and they showed me what trust is, and they showed me what leadership is. And, you know, and they taught me that self-care is important, and that our employee wellness is critical for the success of our business. And, those things, those came from those around me. And I think what I needed to do was stay open-minded enough to be able to listen and to take that in. And I think, that was absolutely critical, and it continues to be critical in the core to what we do.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Sheldon. Jory, how about over to you? What advice would you have for entrepreneurs or startups during Small Business Week?
So in 2010, so I was part of EO for a number of years. In 2010, we started a program called the Accelerator Program, which the whole focus of the program was to help entrepreneurs build businesses bigger than themselves. And so we talked a lot about key areas like strategy, execution, cash, people. And through my time there in those early years, we had approximately 100 different entrepreneurs come and go through the program. Some of them graduating up into EO, which the threshold is $1 million to get in, and some of them not. And the common thread that I think that separated those who were most successful from those who weren't, focus. If I can offer, if I have no end of advice, and if you ask my staff, they'll tell you that to be true. But if I only could offer one piece of advice, that is focus. Go narrow to get big.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, that's great advice. Rob, how about over to you?
Well, I like both of Jory and Sheldon's answers, but my first, jumping on the focus part of it, of course, but for me, it's about the people. So no matter what business you're building and what business you're starting, if you are, a B2B or B2C, doesn't matter. The people working with you or the people that you're doing business with, we're all social animals, and it all starts with building that relationship. And once you build that relationship, you get the trust. So to steal a line from Simon Sinek, if you don't understand people, you don't understand business. And so I would say, obviously the focus one is correct. And from what Sheldon had added as well, but understand the people you're working with, and get to know really what their needs are for what your product is that you're selling, or the service that you're doing, and understand your people that are around you, and let them have that rope.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Rob. I'm just going to pause and check and see if there's anything on the chat. Shauna Kay, I know that you're monitoring the chat as well, so feel free to jump in with anything that you have on your end.
People on Facebook are just loving the conversation. They like the idea of staying focused and remaining, having an eye on what you're wanting to do. And they love the authenticity of the speakers who are on. So that's very good. And that's what BBB is about: trust and being authentic to your business and who you are. So good conversation on Facebook.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Shauna Kay. And again, if there's anybody that has any questions that are joining us on Zoom today, you can go ahead and just enter them in that chat box, probably in the bottom of your screen, depending on how your screen is laid out. You can go ahead and enter those questions there.
Mary?
So, yes.
Can I go off on a tangent?
You can always go off on a tangent, Rob.
Well, I'm curious to see what Jory and Sheldon both have to say about this, because you touched on authenticity.
Yeah.
And, I don't think you can teach that. Sheldon mentioned very early in the panel that you can teach leadership, and I truly believe that you can. But I also think that true leaders are authentic. And my question, I guess, to both of them is, can you teach authenticity? Is that something that we're all born with, that we either have or don't have, or is that something that we can teach over a period of time? Shelley or Jory?
I'm not sure. I guess I'll answer. I'm not sure authenticity is something that you teach. I think it's a choice, isn't it? You either choose to expose who you are for who you are, or you choose not to. At least that's my perception of authenticity. And, I think, so having been in EO for 10 years and met with and interacted with hundreds of entrepreneurs here in this city, we had introverts and extroverts, we had technicians and strategists, we had, every trade, every industry represented. And I think what bound them together is, one, they were extremely good at whatever they did, extremely good. And that's how their business was built. In multiple examples, they were the technician who became the business owner or leader. And the other one is they were likable. Didn't matter, introvert, extrovert, big picture, detail, like it didn't matter. They were likable. And I think this, people want to work with people that they enjoy working with. So I think authenticity, coming back to your question, Rob, is a choice. And I think about myself. I mean, in the early days, I was 23 years old. I was managing 40, 50 something year olds. I was, way over my head, right? Like way over my head. Had never run a business before, had never managed a team before. Grew up on 46th Street in Lloydminster, didn't know computers. The 47-year-old Jory looking at the 23-year-old Jory is thinking, this is a bad investment. Like, I would not give him a dime of my money. But I think what saved me was my ignorance. And so in more than one occasion, I had to say, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm here, I want to help, but I don't know. So, and it took me a while to get over that. Initially, that was really hard to admit. So it was a choice for me. And so the short answer is, I think, I'm not sure if it can be taught or not. I don't know that, but for me, it was a choice.
You brought up a really good point there. Sorry, Shell. You brought up a really good point as far as the ignorance. And that's the one thing that I learn every day. And it's something that I'm learning right now, even with my partnership team. Like, I've got, as a managing partner of this company, I've got the licensees or franchisees that I have to deal with, but I've also got my partnership group to deal with. But a lot of them are also licensees. So we're reaching a rock and a hard place. And I'm learning now that it's tough for me to wear two hats when dealing with that group of people, because I'm doing the wrong answer. And there's some times where I think when we're trying to build that trust, is saying to yourself, I don't know the answer. And I think by telling people that you don't know the answer and being honest about it, and I guess, in fact, being authentic, you help build that trust on that. Shelley?
Well, I needed to go on to Google. Find out
Authenticity.
what being authentic means. It says, being authentic means that you act in ways that show your true self and how you feel. Rather than showing people only a particular side of yourself, you express your whole self genuinely. That means to succeed in being authentic, you first have to know who your true self actually is.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. And it's the best that I can be is by how I show up for others. And I think if I think, the best I can be for my wife or for my son or for my daughter or for, the people I work with, I have to be a little bit selfish in how I take care of myself. And I think, that allows me to be authentic. And it gives me the confidence to, I'd like to know somebody that knows everything, right? I mean, I know what I know, and, and I have to get out of the way and really understand what I don't know. And I think one thing that I had to really learn over my time, and especially in the area that we work in, in the issues of abuse, harassment, discrimination, etc., was I really had to learn to listen. I used to think that I listened, but I really didn't listen, right? And I had to really pay attention to really just kind of really practice that. And I think, those things, and when I talk about practice or teaching, I think, practice, like I look at, and I take it to a hockey analogy, like, probably from the time I was 8 years old to playing pro hockey, we learned 5 different power plays. Meanwhile, we practiced it every day to get a little bit better. Some days were better than others. And I look at, well-being or leadership, or that's the way I look at it. I think that we continually have to practice that. We've got to pay attention to continually trying to strive to be better on a daily basis. And some days are better than others for me, but I think that ultimately my goal is to be the best I can be, and you know what, acknowledge and make amends when I haven't been the best. And and it's about, this is not about perfect, it's about progress, right? Not perfection. And I think so. I guess, I don't know, I didn't even know what authenticity really meant, but when I looked it up, I guess it kind of gave me a little bit of my answer.
I think you're right.
If I could say anything on that one, sorry, Mary, if I could say anything, given where you were and what you've come from, Shell, you're the most authentic guy I could probably ever meet.
Yeah.
Now that I don't have the mullet.
That was ugly.
Nothing wrong with the mullet.
I had a good mullet.
Yeah.
I took my son for a haircut last night and I tried to get him to get one. And I always like a good hockey reference as well. Because I think when I look at hockey, and Jory, did you play hockey?
For about the length of a cup of coffee, not like Sheldon's career over here. So yeah, my dad figured out pretty early I was not going to make the NHL. So he pointed me in other directions.
Well, as long as you've been on a pair of skates, and you did grow up in Saskatchewan, so I'm sure you've been on the rink. I think trust is so intertwined with hockey. When I look at a good hockey team, when I look at how they play and how they have trust in each other, and they know the position that the other one's going to be in when they take that shot. Trust is so important. And I know for my kids, sports are important because I think it teaches them trust at a very young age, and in lots of different ways that transfers to business and relationships and everything else later on in life. And you can't grow up in Saskatchewan and not play a little bit of hockey, Jory. So I figured you would have.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So we are, and somebody just commented on the thing that they own a hair salon and mullets are back. So Sheldon, if you're thinking about it, you could.
I am actually.
Well, then there you go. Jennifer says they're back. So we can connect you with Jennifer so that you can get that mullet. And for the next panel discussion, hopefully we'll see some mullets online too. So some great feedback from the chat. Knowing what is and what you don't know and finding the people that know it. That was huge for me. That's great. My biggest takeaway from today's panel was go narrow to go big. Thanks, I needed that. So some great feedback there. Some more on mullets, which is great. For hair and dressing, Zoom calls, all businesses, party up top. Business up top, party on back or bottom. So we are 2:09. Anything that we haven't covered that you guys want to cover? I am so appreciative that each of you have taken time to join us today. Trust and leadership is something that obviously from a brand, it's very important to us here at BBB. And personally, it's something that's very important to me. Rob, you talked about authenticity, and I know from my early days in leadership, you guys are not that early, but I struggled when I had kids, when I first had kids, about as a leader and having everything all together, and also still being a mom, and how do you do it? And it finally just got to a point that I had no choice but to lay my cards on the table and admit that my life was really, really messy, and that in that I was still going to do everything I could to strive to be the best leader that I could. That also meant being a leader at home, a leader in my life, a leader at work, and all the hats that I wear. And I think that's the only way to do it, is just to lay your cards on the table. So whether you are a small business joining us, or you're running a major corporation, or you're a consumer, or you're somebody that's looking into getting into business, wherever you are on your journey, don't undersell the importance of trust. It's very easy to get focused on the commercial side of the business and just the sales, or just the bottom line, or just the processes and procedures. But I assure you this, you will not disappoint yourself if you spend some time focusing on trust and your values, and making sure that when you are aligning your people, that you're thinking of that. You're thinking of how they're going to represent the brand, and whether they're going to be somebody that is going to be able to know where the puck's going to go next, as we say. So, Rob, let's go over to you. Anything that you want to cover off that we have not covered today?
Well, I'd expand on. I mean, you talked about, Shell just said earlier about, we don't all know everything. And that's the piece that I'm learning with every single day. And the piece that I think that I need to be more vulnerable to, and accepting feedback. Sometimes as leaders, we have a path and we think we know what that path is, and we develop it and we reverse engineer it, and that's where we go. And sometimes it's hard for us to pivot. Doesn't make you a bad leader by not pivoting. But I think by looking at a full picture and allowing yourselves to be a little bit more vulnerable, you open yourself up to a bigger and broader spectrum, or a bigger picture. And again, Shelley mentioned it earlier again about, I'm kind of like, or I'm much like him, where I like to talk and get a lot of feedback. And that, Mary, from working with me at the BBB, Vicky, who's on the call today, knows that, because we talk all day long. But what I fail to do is talk to my partners. And especially, it hasn't been as bad before COVID, but especially during COVID, it's been difficult because they're not here. And I hate talking on the phone. So it's one of those things where, I think we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable and learn from that, and be able to kind of expand on it. And, as much as we like to talk about, being leaders, it doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. And I think it makes us better leaders by being able to acknowledge those mistakes and learn from them.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Rob.
That's been deep thoughts by Jack Handy.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, you stole it from me.
Love you.
Jory, any last thoughts that you'd like to leave us with today?
Yeah, it's Small Business Week. So again, I'm a huge fan of the entrepreneurial spirit. Congratulations to all of you. You've started on a path, and that the only thing I could offer right now is just do what you love, and the money will follow. And I wish you all the success going forward, and hopefully we get a chance to do this again in another year. So thanks for the invite.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Jory. Sheldon?
Yeah. Well, thanks to Jory and Rob and Mary, and much like what Jory was talking about. I mean, I think for me, I never ever thought of myself owning and running a business. You know what? It was something that I loved and I was passionate about, and we started. And I think the biggest challenge, we have great ideas. A lot of times there's many ideas out there that never ever get started. And I think if you've started, you're doing it. And I think that that's the most important step is getting started and taking the action. And I've learned a lot, and don't be shy to walk next door and meet your business your business neighbor, and create a relationship, because they might have some great ideas of how you can be better yourself. So it's an honor to be here. I learned a lot today. I got a bunch of notes, so spelling's all incorrect, but I have notes, and I look forward to maybe joining you all again.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And thank you again, each of you. Really appreciate you being part of today's panel. So much insight. Like Sheldon, I've got lots of notes. I'm a note taker, so I made all sorts of scribbles all over my page, and I appreciate that. And thank you to all of you that have joined our call today. You know, as we said at the start of the call, each of you make a choice, and you've all chose to be here today to talk about trust and leadership, and that really says something. So I value you and acknowledge the time that you have taken to invest in yourself and your own understanding. So we have another session coming up at 3 o'clock today where we talk about benefits as part of our BBB Connect series. And then BBB goes all things Brady. Maria Martinello, our new Director of Sales and Marketing, is kicking off networking virtually on October the 29th. So you can take a look at our feed for that. And with that, I just want to thank everybody for joining. Have a great day. Stay warm, be safe, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.